Hello and welcome to the Iron Maiden. My name is Abby and today I'm going to show you how I attack the Puffin matchup. Now Puffin is not that hard of a matchup for Vynnset, and I think that's because out of the three High Seas heroes in CC, let's forget Scurv, she is not very good at blocking sometimes with a lot of items. She does run blues but not nearly as many as Gravy or Marlin does, and because of all the aggressive boost cards or cog cards, she's also very aggressively slanted. So because of that, Vynnset of course has a much easier matchup into aggressive slanted decks. So this matchup's not as bad as Marlin and Gravy. Not that those are completely bad, but more challenging. There are two types of Puffin decks that you have to know about for now. There might be a third or fourth on the way. So they have the boost decks and the not boost decks. The boost decks, of course, have very easy access to go again because of all the boost cards, and they have good efficiency. They are more willing to play items like Boom Grenade, either because they're aggressive or because they play Heist, which can buy them back. They're also much less reliant on cogs, because they don't need cogs to give go again to lots of their attacks. They can usually convert entire hands, even with 0 cogs. Whereas the non-boost decks get to play some very powerful generic and pirate cards. So that can include the 0 for 4 D-Reacts like Sink Below or Shelter from the Storm. It also includes disruptive cards like Conqueror of the High Seas, C&C as well, and then Pummel in some decks. That's a bit rarer. So the difference really between these two decks is how much they need cogs. The boost deck gets cogs for its power cards, which I'll show soon, but the generic base deck with not boost needs cogs in order to convert hands properly. The equipment they play is slightly different, although it's very similar really. So they play in the boost deck Teklo Foundry Heart most of the time. It adds 3 block, and it also gets +1 resource every single turn that they want it, because they boost generally every single turn. They sometimes play Teklo Plasma Pistol to have a consistent weapon, although I think lots of them play Spitfire because it is very, very efficient, and if you don't need a cog on a given turn, obviously Spitfire is a great way to use your cog. The not boost deck can't run Teklo Foundry Heart, so it runs Tunic usually, which gives consistent resources every few turns, but doesn't cost any cards from your deck. I think the not boost deck also usually runs Spitfire, but I have seen Blunderbuss every now and then. They kind of have not that much impact because the not boost deck has less access to go again, I think. And then they have a lot of shared cards. They're pretty similar in a lot of ways. So they have the powerful cog cards. Cogworks Zeppelin is seeing play in Rainbow in a lot of decks. And Palantir Aeronaut is one of the more powerful attacks that can destroy equipment, even if that equipment doesn't have Blade Break or something similar. Then they have all their cog generation. So Goldwing Turbine, for example, sees a fair bit of play, and also Copper Cog. They usually have at least 6 Copper Cog, and I have seen all the way up to 12 Copper Cogs, replacing almost every other blue in some decks. And then they have defensive cog generators. So Pinion Century and other lower rarity cards sometimes see play, well definitely Pinion, but Golden Sky Warden sees play in most of these decks because it's quite powerful. It's also not the worst to attack with, whereas the Century can't attack. So it's a little bit more flexible. So what are we going to do in order to win this matchup? So we need to know that both types of Puffin decks are pretty aggressive. They do want to win with damage, and because of that, we need to block and attack efficiently instead of taking long setup turns. Puffin decks also block pretty well, unfortunately, kind of like a warrior. They have lots of blues and most of their cards block for 3. So sometimes you need to take 1 turn off to set up, but you always want to be taking that setup turn when you feel like they don't have cogs, or when you can Arsenal a D-React or play a Chains of Mephetis. The D-Reacts really help keep up with the aggressive mech cards, so they block pretty efficiently, and of course they can unbrick hands by making rune chants. And then the other two cards, Chains and Succumb, are very disruptive. Chains sometimes doesn't really do much against Puffin because they're happy to play most of their cards, but it's still pretty annoying. It still sometimes disrupts them. And Succumb, if they don't block, it's obviously very powerful. So it's okay to put in Arsenal because when Puffins do block, they usually block all the way out, and then when they have a good hand, they don't block. I find that they're not type of decks to fatigue, they're just waiting for Vynnset to fail a little bit, and then they're going to turn the corner and attack. You can actually also see this in the recent Worlds in Vegas. There's a very good Puffin versus Vynnset game that I would suggest watching, in which the Puffin spends a long time blocking, and then the Vynnset turns it around. Well, has to set up to turn it around. The last thing you really need to remember is you have to bolt the bird. Polycranker is too powerful a card to be left unchecked. If they have one boost card on any given hand, one crank card on any given hand, then Polycranker says draw a card, which is extremely powerful. So you need to use your Flail of Agony on it. You can do this on a turn where you block with the rest of your hand, swing Flail, and get a rune chant for next turn, as well as killing Poly, of course. Or you can do this after a go again, which is even better because you get to kill the Cranker and also do damage. But you need to remember to kill it. In the few games when Puffin had just come out, when I had played, I thought, maybe you can ignore Poly. And I tried, and you really can't. You've got to kill it. So now I'll show you a gameplay. This is a very aggressive game between me and a Puffin. So I've got my D-Reacts, I've got my Chains. I chose to bring in a Revel and a Beseech at this time. I think now I would be more comfortable bringing in the rest of the D-Reacts instead. So I get to banish a Rune Gate, Arsenal, D-React, which is just a very decent turn one. They do a double crank off their Boom Grenade. You can tell they're going to be aggressive because they have the Crown of Dominion. Sometimes they run Crown of Providence. That means they're probably going to be more defensive. I decide this hand's pretty functional if I don't draw an attack here, so I'm going to try and activate my Face Purgatory. Get one of the cards out of their hand. It also helps to not let the Boom Grenade hit, because obviously we don't want that efficiency. Then they have the Dovetail, which can max out at 6 damage here, because they don't have the unicycle legs. So here we can use our D-React and Armor to patch this up. And if we do that, it means we'll have an extra rune chant for next turn, which means that we can also send Deathly Wail instead of having to send the less powerful Eloquent Eulogy. They go with Go Again instead, of course, because they can't hit, and that means they can also send their pistol. Remember that weapon attacks do not trigger Boom Grenade, so 2 damage is 2 damage here, that's fine. Okay, so we can banish, we can play our Malefic and Deathly Wail. If they take any damage here, we get to Cull, which means that, of course, their turn will be worse, but also we could pay 1 life. If we do that, we could have 3 rune chants next turn. We could also not pay 1 life, and then have 2 rune chants next turn. At this point in the game, I've decided to pay 1 life. We draw Chains of Mephitis or and attack to banish. So we could either keep most of this hand, use the Go Again from Succumb to play an attack and the Chains, or we could block with a lot of this hand, banish Chains and play it. There's lots of flexibility in this hand, actually. I'm very impressed with it. So, gotta think about what's best. I decide I'm going to block with the Deathly Delight, which means I'm trying to do my Go Again into Chains playline. They don't have Go Again here. So they just hit cogs. Oh, they do have go again because they double cranked. So they had an action point, but no go again. They just convert that into 2 damage from the pistol. We can play Malefic. It's very unlikely, I think, that they will block all 4 arcane, so they take all 4 instead. So this means that we can succumb, even if it doesn't have the on hit because they decide to block. It's still good because we can play chains, stop them from drawing properly, maybe mess up the next 2 turns. I'm just looking at creepers here. You can also do a funny thing with chains, which is you can, on your opponent's turn, play chains using creepers, as long as you've blocked with an attack. So here we get to get full value out of our Succumb to Temptation, because as you can see they're playing Teklo Heart, they're not playing D-Reacts, we can be pretty certain of that. This hand's pretty bad. If we take the Sky Skimmer, they don't have any options as far as good go again. But if we take the Fast and Furious and they can't make a cog, then they have no options for go again. So I decided to go with that one. They have a soup up for 2 go again, not a big deal. So going to take that. I don't think blocking with Dirge is ever correct, really. And then they can send the Skimmer. Checking how many I've got. 2 is enough to send Deathly Wail. So here I can either block with the Reduce to Rune Chant and be more able to activate Succumb next turn, or I can Arsenal the Reduce to Rune Chant to try and keep it for a more important turn. So here I'm just using the Dirge to get +2 value. Decide to eat the Malefic just to get more damage now. I will have enough Rune Chants next turn from the Flail that is presumably coming after this, as well as the Reduce to Rune Chant. Could have also eaten the Chains of Mephetis here, but I'd rather keep it for one more turn, especially since they still have Poly. It's very easy for them to get the card draw. They are still committed to not blocking, still committed to racing. Seeing 2 good attacks and 2 pitch cards. Riches of Tropaldani is a very powerful pitch card, so we're going to take that one. Could have also considered taking one of the attacks, but they don't have any cogs, so it might be difficult for them to actually utilize the 2 powerful attacks. They do get to block with their Tinkerings here, which means that they will have 1 cog at least. And they have a Throttle in Arsenal, which is a good use of their extra blue here. So we have a pretty mediocre hand where we can just block out and then send 7. We also get to keep a Malefic on board. So mediocre maybe is a strong word for this hand. It's actually pretty good. They get their free resources. They load their gun. They can shoot that next turn for free now, or they can send it after this one. So they're going to, of course, give go again to that one, so they can either shoot their gun. Well, they can't send their attack, because I know the attack in their hand costs 1. Going to continue keeping the D-React for a more important card. Some of the cog attacks get, when this hits, tap, make a cog. That one's pretty good. When it hits, untap your cogs, that sort of thing. That's where it's really good to use your D-Reacts, because, of course, if they don't hit, they can't do the thing, and they've already tapped all their cogs to activate the abilities of the attack, so they're kind of screwed in both ways. Here they get to do that cool defensive thing where they turn defense into offense. I really do like when decks do that. One of the things I really like about Vynnset is she has those few cards that turn defense into offense. And we just pass. Pretty set up for this coming turn. We have Deathly Wail, assuming that we block with our D-React to be able to play that. We can also Machinations, so we can also swing Flail, or we can block up to 12 with this hand if we needed to. Well, actually, including the D-Rack, we can block 16, which is pretty massive. They have their poly here, so now I think is an excellent time in order to Machinations, Deathly Whale, and then send the Flail at the poly. By keeping a Funeral Moon in hand, because I assume that whatever their next attack is more likely to have an on hit, and I was correct in that assumption. Yep, so I block, try to get them to tap their cogs, and then I can use my D-React here. Now it doesn't matter much because they don't have any way to get another action point, it doesn't look like, so it doesn't make a big difference that they did tap their cogs here, but it might have been a different turn. Oh, they had an action point, of course, they played Cog on the Machine, a very powerful card. Remember folks, if an attack doesn't have go again, it doesn't mean they can't go again. Yep, so we get to do that playline I was talking about, which is threaten just about lethal on Puffin and then kill their poly. We also get to go into next turn with 3 rune chants because of all this, which is pretty good. They turn some defense into offense. Great, so we're looking like we can lock our opponent into blocking next turn as long as we can survive. All we need to do is keep 1 card. So this would have been a great hand to draw all 3 blocks probably, like last turn. But it's not a horrible hand anyway. We've got some life to work with. We have 3 rune chants so we can set up for the annihilation. If we annihilate our opponent, it will probably force them to block with their entire hand, which will then, of course, force them to be on the back foot for the rest of the game until either we brick or they die. So now we have to block with these 2 blocks in order to live. We don't need them anyway. Keeping a Dirge or a Malefic would have been nice, but it's not necessary. Might as well block with the Creeper Tube, just because we're not going to be using it this game. It's too late in the game. I think it's more important here to have 2 life, so that I can pay life in the event that they get to 1 and I get to 2. I can pay life and finish them off. We also still have Vexing Quill Hand, which is amazing. Taking it this late into the game means that it's very difficult for us to brick. So we get to send our Annihilation, Rune Champ for next turn. Really, we have won the game here, but we still have to not brick for the rest of the game until they die. Until they draw items, or they don't draw blues. And that is, of course, the difficult part of Vynnset, is not bricking in the endgame. Yep, so they pitch and block their entire hand, of course, as you would expect. We get a Deathly Whale. So we could here have Quill-handed, but since our opponent attacked us, we get to save it another turn. We also could have Dirged, but now we get to either Dirge for value or stick it in Arsenal. I'm going to Dirge so that both the Rune Chance and the Physical each threaten lethal, so it will take our opponent's entire turn. At this point, they decide they don't want to play, they didn't draw a blue. So, very quick game. If you want to see an example of a slower game, check on the World's Vegas stream. There's a good example of a Puffin game in which the Puffin blocks a lot more. If you'd like to watch any other of my videos, there should be one there for you. If you'd like to read my comics, there's there on the left. There's my Twitter account if you want to follow me there. And there's the Discord link in the description below, which I'd recommend you put questions and comments in and just join. It's an excellent resource for Vynnset players. We've got lots of excellent players having good discussions every single day. If you don't want to, you can also leave a comment down here. You don't have to join the Discord. Alright, have a nice day and be good.